There's kind of different levels of enrichment, similar to when you're eating a hot sauce. You can have extremely concentrated hot sauce, or you can have really, really dilute hot sauce. It's the same kind of thing where there's concentration of uranium. If you have 90 or 100% enriched U-235, that's the kind of the ratio of the U-235 to the U-238. But the fissile stuff, the stuff that can rapidly release energy, when it's in the 90% range, that's where you're talking about a weapon. But then the fuel that's used in reactors today is much, much lower enrichment. So it's roughly 5% typically. In Canada, it's down closer to 1% or lower. Some of the advanced reactors that are being proposed are kind of around 20%, but that's kind of the max that's used in reactors. It's really interesting because humanity is pretty good at engineering their way around risks. And there's a lot of other things we take for granted that we do on a pretty frequent basis that are arguably more dangerous. As an example, flying. If you look at the history of flying itself was almost way more dangerous than nuclear waste, because with waste, you just have this substance you have to put in a concrete cask and maintain that enclosure for a period of time. Within 600 years, you could stand next to the waste and you'd be fine. So all the gamma radiation for the most part has decayed away at that point. That's like a problem that you didn't have to have anyone die to learn how to solve. Whereas airplanes, like there were tons of deaths before we learned how to really solve that. And now it's essentially one of the safest forms of travel. I think that's what's interesting. And also with waste, so part of the concern people have is, say, in thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years, some of the waste might leak into the soil, and then that might spread through the water and people might drink it. The thing people don't realize there is that there's already radiation all around us at all times. So there's radiation coming from space, there's radiation coming from the Earth. We actually are currently on a giant nuclear reactor of sorts, like the mantle itself. People don't realize this, but geothermal energy is actually in large part nuclear energy, because the heat, partially is decay heat residual from the formation of Earth. But also some of that heat is coming from radioisotope decay in the mantle. There's already radiation all around us. There's also uranium in seawater. So people's concern that there might be like a tiny amount that gets into water that you end up drinking it's such a low dose. Even if that did happen, which is a big if, the way more pressing concern is not deploying nuclear and having climate change and things like that happen in the much more short term. So yeah, it's just a fascinating litmus test for people's perception of risk and fear and so on.